So, Dominic Beresford, before we go into it though, I just want to say how much level of narcissism is it to do it talking on a camera with a picture of yourself here?
Hey, well,
Anyway, right. Yeah. Right. So, right. Dominic Beresford. So you're the guy who, how can I put it, has kind of went viral lately. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, like, listen, I've probably watched them clips over 100 times in 12 years. It's gone really, really crackers, TikTok, everything. There's a couple of questions I've got for you.
Yes.
So, right, first and foremost, before I kind of go back to the start, how did you get them? I think you've done a few and you've got a few more to do. But
yes.
How did you get those iconic impressions so bang on to the T? And I'm talking about the vocals, I'm talking about the mannerisms, I'm talking about the pauses, just basically everything to the clothes, to the old VHS look. How did you get it done?
Well, it's weird really, because you might not believe this, but up until about January this year, I didn't know who Paul Sykes was. Really, really bizarre. Then a mate of mine says, "Here, Dom, you want to check this documentary out?" So obviously I watched Paul Sykes at Large. And when you got a couple of lads driving to a gig, because I'm a musician by trade.
Yeah.
When the two of us are driving along, we're always doing impressions. For years, we've done impressions of teachers, of family members. It's basically people that nobody else would recognise, only us two. So I've been watching this documentary and I was just absolutely hooked. And I think what it was is the speech patterns and the accent, because where I live, it's over in Huddersfield. So Huddersfield, it's about 10 miles away from Wakey, where Paul Sykes were brought up. So we're in roughly the same ballpark, but not quite. But the accent's slightly different. So I just kept on watching it. And then obviously I got into reading your books as well. I read Sweet Agony, and then I read all your books. So I was, for a period of about 3 months, I was absolutely obsessed. And then I started doing a few impressions. And then my mate said, "Why don't you set up a TikTok?" Now, I'd never been on TikTok before. I've got a Facebook page and all that, but I've never been on TikTok before. So I did a couple of impressions, stuck them on. And my mate said, "I promise you, Dom, this is going to go viral." I said, "Oh, whatever." And then next minute, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000. I thought, bloody hell, I've never seen out like it. But what it was just simply a case of, right, I thought, when I get a bee in my body about something, whatever it is, if it's an impression or if I'm writing a song or something, I want it to be just right. So I was checking out what he were wearing, and he were wearing one of them old sort of granddad shirts, the collarless shirts, sleeveless shirts. And obviously had his big sort of mustache, a bit like, do you remember Boys? You might not remember it, Boys from the Black Stuff, Yozza Hughes.
Yeah, I do, yeah. Yozza Hughes, yeah.
So I sort of grew. I've never grown a mustache before. I've always sort of had stubble, but never grown a tash. So I thought, I'm going to do this right. And then got my white pumps, and then just sat in guard. I even got a mug that was a small mug to make my hands look bigger, because obviously everybody knows that Paul Sykes had gargantuan hands. Mine are sort of biggish, but not nowhere near as big as it. So I just thought, I'll get myself a little mug and make my hands look bigger. And I just thank God. And basically, for a period of weeks and weeks and weeks, I just studied every little minutiae within that shark footage and where his hands were going. There's still some of it that's not quite bob on, but I tried to get it as good as I could. Like, "Had me breakfast in Moscow, mate. Tea at Wood Street, Nick. Yeah, I've been about a bit." And it was that sort of the little pauses, because you don't go, "Have me breakfast in Moscow, mate. Tea." There's a pause. If you notice with Paul Sykes, somebody mentioned it in one of your interviews, actually, is always permanently apoplectic. So he's
Yeah.
always stumbling over it. He's always sort of interrupting himself because he's that sort of hyper.
So that's a good word. That's a good word, Dom.
Right.
Apoplectic. So if anyone doesn't know what that means, it's like, say Alex Ferguson. It's like when you're that enraged. It's, you know, like the cartoon character Samity Sam when he's chasing Bugs Bunny, and it's a fantastic word. Yeah, you know, and it's literally he's a guy who, you know, even when he was on the brink of, well, he wasn't on the brink. He was living in despair. You don't get lower in society than what he was. And even though when he was at those lowest ends, he still thought he knew the best. And he still had the attitude of, like, you know, like he would, can I remember talking to one of his really close friends. I won't name him because he doesn't like to be named.
Sure.
And he'd sit in a pub and, like, if he'd quiz people, he'd entertain, you know, he's his own entertainment. He'd ask people the capitals around the world, and, you know, and he'd blatantly take the mick out of people, give them really easy ones, and, like, he'd get enraged, like what you've just said. So that was very much his character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all I've sort of heard about Paul Sykes is literally from the documentaries, and also don't forget the Hull Prison documentary as well. There's some great footage of Paul with the prison guard, Eric. I said that for a reason, Eric. You know, and he goes off on one. That's great footage. But all the stuff that I've learned is basically from your books and from Paul Sykes' book himself. So I've never really met that many people. I did meet one person actually that used to run Rooftops. In fact, I think he owned it. Rooftop, you know, the nightclub in Wakefield and Heppies. And he's getting on a bit now, but I was just asking him because he was the only. I don't actually know that many people from Wakefield, if I'm honest. I'm more Huddersfield then. Yeah. But I was asking him, did you ever meet Paul Sykes? He said, oh yeah, he used to come in regularly. I said, what were he like? He said, well, he could be a bit of an handful, but he were always all right with me. And I said, how did you deal with him? And he said, to be honest, I just got one of the lads to fill a carrier bag full of booze, and he just give it to Paul, and he'd just wander off. So so he never had any dealings. Although I did meet somebody the other day from Wakefield. I were actually, and I said to the lady on the cash out, I said, did you just out of interest, have you ever heard of Paul Sykes? And she said, yes, I have, and he was a bully. And I thought, because you've got to be. You've got to be careful when you eulogize. You've got to be careful when you eulogize anybody, even if it's, say, like John Lennon. If you're like, I'm a big Beatles fan. John Lennon was a bit of a bastard. He did whack his first wife Cynthia once, and he had his moments where he was a bit of a bully, to say the least. And if you're a fan of I'm not saying I'm a fan of Paul Sykes, because, like I say, I barely know the subject, but it's crucial when you're looking at anybody, a figure in history or a celebrity, and if they always seem to be too good to be true, they usually are too good to be true, and there's something, another side of the personality that's lurking there. So whenever you're talking about Paul Sykes, it is, you've got to tread a fine line. There are family members of his that are still around. There are people that knew him, and there are people that might have been bullied by him. And it's important to recognise that as well. And one thing when I was doing the impression, because I said to my mate, bearing that in mind, I thought, I'm totally different to Sykes. I'm a musician type. I'm a arty party type. And I said, I just got to be careful with this, because, there'll be people that might take exception to it, quite rightly so as well. So the angle that I'm coming at it from is, I'm just fascinated by the vocal similarities to the Huddersfield accent and Paul Sykes's accent, the Wakefield accent, and also the humour as well, because that's one thing that that's a recurring theme in your interviews. There's so many people that have said what a sharp bloke he was. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
the footage when he was at the Lovesick Working Men's and he's doing the fundraiser for the Boys Club. And he gets out the paint and he said, now this is a Patrick Mackay. Now, I don't anybody knows, don't you know about painting? But he's a mate of mine and he's, oh no, what was it? He's in the ABC book of mass murder. He's a mate of mine and he's got this massive grin and everybody's falling about. And you can see how the guy had, you know, comic timing.
Well, do you know something? I spoke to the guy who made that. Guy called, he died at the start of this year, actually, Roger Greenwood. So he told me, he said, I couldn't believe it. It was almost like as if I told him to. So he gets the picture out. He mentions Patrick Mackay. He talks about it. And then he says he's a mass murderer. And for comedy value, he said you just couldn't ask for any more. No. But what was orchestrated, if you like, was Dennis Flint. So the guy, obviously Roger, God rest him, said to me, so you see the house, then you hear him, then you see him with the wig and the medallion and the tan and the cigar and the expensive shirt, and then you see the desk. Yeah. So it's almost like boom, 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 boom. And yeah, you know, I spoke to someone. I mean, that Paul Sykes page is going absolutely crackers. And someone messaged the other day and said, "Whoa, hang on! I thought this guy was like Keith Lemon." I was like, "No, you know, he's part of social history in West Yorkshire, Wakefield, if you like. I know that annoys a lot of people, but." Once upon a time, he happened
in Huddersfield. In Huddersfield, we used to have a character called Jake Mangelwurzel. Now he was an eccentric, if you like, but he's also a guy actually that used to be on TV called Will Flung as well, who sadly just passed away not so long ago. So we've had these sort of characters, but I know it's a bit more of a contentious thing with Paul Sykes because he was well known and he was infamous, if you like. And there will be a lot of people that would have been mates with him, but there'll also be people that would have been on the... I mean, I always think it's nice to look back at the footage from a distance of 34 years ago and watch it now. But if you were in his company, I mean, you can see in the footage when he's getting married, when Delroy Showers is doing the ceremony. And even Delroy says, "Oh, it's very Monty Python-esque." This because there's a bit of a flavour of Monty Python about Paul Sykes. It wasn't one of his favourite songs. Always look on the bright side of life. I think.
Well, that's what he had on his grave. And I spoke to his solicitor. I forgot her name. She's in the books. And even when he was like a year from death, and he literally looked like death. He'd always shout that to her. And, you know, she'd kind of think, you know, like, it's almost like but he always kept that kind of sense of humor, if you like, that little bit of a kind of sinister smirk, if you like, that very kind of dark humor. But yeah, you know, he was, I know John Spencer, who died sadly about a year ago.
That's right.
So John was, I've seen a book which Paul signed to Sweet Agony, said to John, the greatest man I've ever met. And John said to me, he said, I got him, but not all my mates did.
Yeah.
You know, John's from a place called Over the Border in Middlesbrough, which is sort of the earth. It is, how can I put it, kind of, it's a council estate, but it's been knocked down. It's as much northern. It's kind of you know, it's northern. It's council estate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, similar to the Lovesick estate.
Yeah, and he said, you know, I could mix with them, but I mean, John had some really famous friends, a lot of people with money, and he said to me, he said, I get him, but I know some of my mates who were like millionaires and all that. He said, when I've brought him in company, you know, and I've took him out drinking with Alex Higgins and who was the other one? Malcolm Allison, a few people he'd never really wanted me to name, but they were big names. He said, he said, you know, some loved him, and then some looked at him and were looking at John as if, John, who's this man? Because he was very, very, very scary, and not everyone got him. But, you know, albeit whether you liked him or you didn't like him, either way, you found him fascinating to study. And that's why, of course, there's going to be films and all that about him eventually.
Absolutely, yeah. It's
That's why there's people like yourself, Dom, doing kind of impressions, which, you know, for humour and a bit of banter. And a lot of times it goes over people's head, and you shouldn't be doing that. And, you know, the amount of times I've been in Bethnal Green, and, you know, that's accepted because the Kemps played the craze and Tom Hardy played the craze. But I've done books on Lee Duffy, on Paul. They didn't kill anyone, but it's kind of seen as morally unforgivable when, you know, these are cold-blooded murderers. But it's you know, I've written a book on Jack the Ripper. I'm fascinated watching Adolf Hitler's body language.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't mean I'm not a fan of Paul Sykes. A lot of people they write things on the page as if it's like going to get at me. I'm like, listen, I didn't know him. I've got no emotional ties. I'd never heard of him until 5 years after he died. I do have to probably thank him for, you know, I would never have become any kind. I mean, I just released the 23rd book this week. I've got 24, 5, 6 finished. And I've got Mickey Duff, Brian. So I'm probably going to do at least 30 books in my life, at least. But if I never watched that documentary, if I never read his book and walked into the story and met, I would never have had. It would never have entered my head. You know, I mean,
well, that's incredible. So basically, the Paul Sykes story, that's what kickstarted your career in writing books then?
1,000,000%.
Wow.
You know, I mean, listen, I left school with no exams. My English has always been good.
Yeah.
You know, but you can put things on Microsoft Word and all this kind of thing. And, you know, I wasn't exactly awful level at the start. Obviously, I've improved. But listen, all you need is a bit of a will and a drive. And I've got it in abundance. And this guy, you know, I was no author at the start. And when it released and people were going, oh, this is amazing and that. And it knocked Jimmy Tibbs off. This was 2017. This was what? 7.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And this knocked like proper authors off, and I'm thinking I'm just some fat knobhead who's winging it. And I really, so I didn't know whether I was going to make a tenner or whether I was going to be laughed out. And then obviously it kind of went a bit crackers. I mean, what's the feedback been for you, Dom, when you started doing all these? Because what captures me is it's that half a second. It's literally, you know, some people said to me, I didn't even know that was pretend until I watched it again.
Yeah. It's bizarre. A lot of people, when I start looking, because you dread the comments, because it's weird when I've got a YouTube channel, and I purposefully, you know, when I start doing these impressions, I sent them to you because I was saying to my mate, I wonder if I should put them on my channel. Now, my channel is it's only small. It's only got about 3,000 followers. And I do ukulele tutorials. As you can probably see behind me, I've got loads of instruments. And I just do uke lessons. But I thought, I could put it on there and you never know, it might gain a bit more traction. But I just thought, there's some very sort of delicate and gentle people on that channel. And there's me going, punch them in the fucking ear. It's like they'll be thinking, what's up with him, you know? So I thought I'll just send him to JB. He can do with him what he wants.
Tom, have you thought about writing any songs on him?
It's an idea that I was thinking. I was saying to it, but I just while I remember actually, you're saying what was the reaction? You know, there's so many mates of mine, and this is one of the loveliest things about it. You know, there's people that I haven't spoken to for maybe a year, maybe about 5 years, and they've been sending me these messages saying, fucking hell, Tom, that impression you done, it's absolutely brilliant. And then it's like, by the way, how you doing? All right there, Steve. You know, and it's just been a lovely way of getting in touch. And you wouldn't believe how many people are actually familiar my age, because I'm 40, well, I'll be 47 next week. You know, people my age that are fascinated, not in a sort of unhealthy way, just like a lot of my mates are into boxing. So for a start, that's a box ticked. And
Yeah.
then they, like you said before, you know, there's just something fascinating about the guy, you know. And I mean, it's not, like I say, it's not a hero worshiping. It's just like, it's more, you just never knew where the humor was going to go. Where, you know, you never knew if he were being serious or if he was doing it for effect, which kind of keeps you on the seat of the edge of your seat. But I've got so many mates that are, when the impression went up on TikTok, and they knew exactly who it was. And I think it sort of bamboozled them, because Paul Sykes is the last person a lot of people would associate me with. Like maybe Gallagher Brothers or Beatles or something to do with music. But this is totally left field for me.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Dom? Obviously, it's exploded, but I think YouTube officially, I think it was opened on November the 30th, 2006. And that was America. So I think it kind of come over here 2007. So, of course, he died 2007. So, but obviously, if that kind of, it just was too late for him, because if that was around when he was still around, you know, there would have been people, there'd have been people adopting him and trying to make money off him. And, you know, he could have literally been I don't know. I mean, I've spoke to so many people. I mean, there's been some really famous people who bought them books. One being, do you remember In Bed with Medina? He did something on sightseeing.
All right, go on. I'm not sure.
So he's done something on him, and then you've got the League of Gentlemen, and they're very aware of him. I've spoke to Ricky Gervais, who's obsessed with him.
Right.
Roger Greenwood said to me, he said he was at an award-winning thing years ago, and Robbie Williams come up to him, and Robbie Williams went looking for him and said, "Are you that Roger Greenwood who made Paul Sykes that lad?" So this is one of the world's most famous stars.
Absolutely.
Do you know? And obviously now there's Jamie Carragher. I mean, I've spoken at length to your likes of your Martin O'Neill and yeah, totally captivating. But for what, obviously I think you've done 3, maybe 4.
Yeah, I think I chopped one of them up just because my mate said, "Oh, just put a short one on." So I just chopped.
But you've definitely got some. I mean, the one in Hull Prison where you've got 30 years left. I mean, that is a must. Obviously, the one where he's riding around the landing with petrol.
Oh God, that's one of my favourite stats. Yeah, the days have gone when I've seen you riding around the landing on a motorbike. You know, it's just like, where is this going? And if it happened at school, Fred Smith hit me. Right, have a look in. No, Mark. Well, go and hit him back then. Right, that's what they say, innit? And that's what they should have said to him. And it's like,
you know, I mean, have you thought about getting your missus involved and maybe doing the wedding? Because no, seriously, I've been in the house a couple of times over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I've you know, I meet so many famous boxers and footballers, and I'm kind of used to it now. But when I went in there, I was a little bit startled. I couldn't help but see like Delroy in front of me, and the old man sat there, and you know, him in the corner said the first one to come. It was like I was in the house looking, and I wasn't looking at it like I was in this. I mean, I've been a few times, but
yeah,
you know, when you look at the garden where he did that obviously iconic and totally unforgettable speech, it's still more or less the same. Do you know what I mean? And it's like,
it hasn't changed much.
Do you know what? It's like I walked in the kitchen and I really had to stop myself from, this is the person whose house it was, from walking in going, just let your eyes adjust, yeah? Am I right now? You might as well not have them. I'm all right.
Not have them. They'll electrify.
Do you know what I mean? It's crackers. I was like, yeah, I was pretty starstruck, to be honest, and meeting.
It's like walking on a film set almost, and then you realise, hang on, this is somebody's house, you know?
Yeah.
But it's funny actually you mentioned that, because me and my girlfriend did do a bit of a tour a few months ago.
Well, where to?
just the very places that you mentioned. Now, I had a look for. I didn't know which number the house was, but I was saying it's got to be one of the because it just looked. I didn't know which street it was, but obviously there was his grave that. My God, when I think about it now, it must be a nutcase. But anyway, I went over and because I introduced all this to my girlfriend, and she's as much intrigued about it as I am, and she's always laughing at the impression, which is a good thing. Otherwise, because it drives some people absolutely mental, but it's what I do. I do it, I'm always doing impressions anyway. But yeah, we went on a bit of
a Lupsa tour.
I'm going to say pilgrimage, but that might be the wrong word. But yeah, we went there, and I'll tell you what though, going to Dennis Flint's place up in Heath.
Yeah,
it's what I didn't realise is how close in vicinity all these places are, because you could easily walk from Paul's estate to Heath, probably take you about half an hour or something. I thought they were all spread out, but my God, what a mansion that was. Yeah. I think it's flats now, isn't it?
It is. So I'm going to be going in there soon. I was there a couple of months back, but my friend knows the landlord, so I am going to go and do a bit of filming. But when you said there, it's what I do. You've definitely got to do that one where it says, "Wake up one morning, make myself welcome." And I mean, seriously, Dom, when I've done them books, it's a bit like the Lee Duffy books. It's I was in Soho in December, and it was snowing and raining, and I had my hood up and I was freezing, and this guy shouted me, and he went, "I know you," and I was like, and he watches the channel actually. Anyway, he was a guy from Greece over in London on holiday, and all he wanted to stop me. So this was like in the middle of Trafalgar Square or Piccadilly Circus or somewhere. A guy from Greece stopping me in London, wanting to talk to me about Paul Sykes, and he just couldn't make it up. But it is, and obviously when the film was going to start in 2020, COVID ruined that.
Of course, yeah.
There's so many people going, "Oh, it's not going to happen. You're full of lies." Listen, the Western Edge company said to us about 2 years ago, for films, this is nothing. They take a long time. Yeah. They've signed the contract, the script's been written, so they've already spent a bit of money. And then, of course, if you Google their website, the synopsis is on. Leo Bill was hired to write the script. And, I've met, let me just think. So there's a guy from, he's from Barnsley, and he lived in Norway, and he's come over to film the Ghost of Paul Sykes. I don't know whether you've seen it. It's on YouTube on our channel.
He's absolutely brilliant, and
it's like someone looked in my head for the last 10 years.
Yes,
and then it's like I've met people from Derby, like messaging me, and and writing poems and songs, and it's gone absolutely crackers. And as I said, I honestly, hand on my heart, my son's life, I would never. I repeat, never I've ever did a book. And you've got to remember, I remember Roger Greenwood almost mocking me because I went to meet him. I went to meet him in December 2015. So I met him in the Majestic Hotel, which is where they met Paul for when they were filming, for meetups.
Yeah.
And I met him with Paul's sister. And he kind of just went, "Yeah, but you're not a writer, are you?" And I just thought, "I'll show you." And a couple of years ago, he rang the publishing company, so he was aware that I'd done 2 books. But it's gone absolutely crackers. And I, at the start, I was just along for. I watched the documentary. I read the book. You Google him, you find out he died. He was scary. He was a skeleton. But what happened in the middle? So back in 2012, there wasn't then what there is before Jamie Boyle come along.
Yeah.
So I kind of filled in the middle bits, if you like, and that's when the film writers, the film scripts, kind of. So I've saved them a lot of time by doing a lot of research. Like I'll be technical advisor. There's a lot of things like he'd walk like at the end of his life with a hunch, and he'd always have his hands behind the back with usually a can.
Yeah,
and a can is
didn't he
look
get
a
his
can
hand
is
bitten by his friend's dog?
yeah,
And
but
that really nailed his hand
he
off.
had chronic arthritis, and he also had really bad diabetes. So the end of the days, he couldn't even open a can of beer.
No,
very vulnerable. You know, I don't know. Did maybe life come back round? I don't know. Only him above is. A lot of people will say so.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I spoke to a very, very famous actor who has verbally accepted to take the part.
Are we allowed
let
to
me
say a
think.
name here, Jamie?
No. He's well known. He's a bit of a heartthrob. And when you see him with a tash, there's a couple actually, but this guy's verbally agreed.
Yeah.
And when I need to think, I always get them mixed up, the actor and the film director. So when Vaughan Civil watched the documentary in 2017, he said straight away, I text this actor and I said, I'm going to make Paul Sykes at large because that's what the film's called, and you're going to play Paul Sykes. So when I spoke to him in 2017 and I sent him the 3 books, and there's 4 now, he said to me, as an actor, he said the biggest part, wanting me to play that, but these were exact words, was the social justice side of it. Basically, life coming back round, and you know he's been a whatever, but life kind of came back round. And if you've heard that expression, if I've told you a million times, stop exaggerating. The end of his life, if he did any wrong in life, he was paid back. He got. I personally don't think anyone deserves the ending, but
it's almost like the story of Paul Sykes is like a parable almost, and it's like it's certainly a what goes round. Oh, no, you reap what you sow.
Absolutely.
But as you say, I mean, I've got total sympathy with anybody that's got alcohol problems. I gave up drinking myself. About 8 years ago now. My dad was an alcoholic as well. So a lot of the stuff that I've heard about Paul's later life when he did become homeless and drunk, it sort of resonates with me because my dad wasn't homeless, but he died 53, which is a little bit younger than Paul Sykes. And I do have sympathy. It's a bloody difficult thing to kick. I had a decision. It was either go that direction and join your dad and your granddad, or give up drinking and then see where you go. And to be honest, touch wood, I'm glad. If Paul Sykes could have not been a drinker, and if he didn't have that switch that meant that he'd lose control, if he could just keep a tab on his drinking, a tab on his temper, I mean, the infrastructure were there. He was well read. He was an intellect. And he set up that Lubsit. I mean, you did an interview, Jamie, with one of the lads that went to the Lubsit. Boys.
I spoke to a couple, but I think one's on here.
I mean, there's obviously been a lot of stories about the young prisoners and all that. The thing is with that is, I mean, if it happened, then it's bloody awful. But there's never been anybody that's come forward. Like when Savile died, there was just like the sluice gates opened, and there was like hundreds of people that were able to come forward.
500 plus in total.
Yeah, that's it.
And I've in over 12 years.
Sorry,
I've never met one.
Yeah, exactly. It's never happened. Now, that's not to say it didn't happen. But it's just, it's did it or didn't it? I mean, the funny thing is, Jamie, that, if you're talking about, I've got to be careful what you talk about on social media. If you're talking about actually underage stuff, you read his book, Sweet Agony, and it's basically a confession himself.
Yeah, that's in black and white.
15, he was 30. So people are
Um,
focusing on the YP thing in prisons.
yeah.
But it's there in his book, you know. So,
Mhm.
but I mean,
what I'll say on that is, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with me, is so in the 70s. So I went to school in the 90s. So I remember like lads coming my school 18, 19 in cars to go out with lasses, maybe 14, 15.
Exactly
now,
the same at my school as
so
well.
that was the 90s. So back in the 70s, to have, when you're 30, to, I don't know, a couple of 15-year-olds, that was seen as, yeah, I mean, I have to be careful, but I mean, I wasn't even born, but that was seen as, people can see that for what it is, and it was a time completely before me. Towards the end of his life, just so Sykes died in the March. He was beaten really badly in the April. He had his jaw broke, he had his arm broke. The arm he never really recovered from. And when he was picked up in the ambulance, he basically told them what was wrong with him. And when the X-rays, when it kind of happened, the doctor said to him, "Paul, that's exactly right. How did you know all that?" And he said, "Well, obviously I studied the human anatomy, but of course I know a thing about broken jaws." And he kind of, a bit of a smile, but obviously he couldn't because he had a broken jaw. But listen,
broken jaw.
he happened, and he was once upon a time, and it always makes me laugh. How many films has there been on the Essex Boys and the Craze and Chopper and Charles Bronson? And
absolutely, yeah.
And this
just while I remember, is this film? I've heard somewhere that it's supposed to have a bit of a tone of Rita Sue and Bob too. Am I right in thinking that?
So, I'm told the correct term. It's not a musical. It's a black comedy. Now, Bronson is a black comedy. So I'm told it's going to be filmed in Leeds, Pontefract, Wakefield. At the first, they were talking about 2 million. The last update I had about 2 years ago, it's going to be near a million. But Dead Man's Shoes cost something like 300,000 to make, or maybe, I know it was under 400,000. So there's a couple of like, I can't really say, but there's a couple of kind of slightly well-known names. Obviously Michael Parr, who's Ross from Emmerdale, he put his name into the hat.
That's the one that I was thinking of, that I didn't want to say his name.
Yeah, so he's just recently gone back to Emmerdale. So you've got, Dom, you've got a message on the screen. You've got a request.
Yeah, right. I know where it is. I mean, nobody can tell me anything. I don't read Daily Mirror and Sun. I go and have a look. I've lived in the forest of North America. I've lived at the outback of the Ivory Coast. I've lived in India. I mean, breakfast in Moscow. I mean, you see, it isn't AI, folks. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's AI." It's everything. If something seems too good to be true now, it's AI. But I promise you, it's just me. And two people said he don't sound like that at all. And to be honest, I think maybe if you were from Wakey, you'd think, nah, that doesn't sound like him. I mean, I think I've got relatively close. I'd have probably sounded more like him if I still smoked. I used to smoke years ago. And since I gave up, my voice has become a little bit clearer. But you've got to remember, like you said, I'm 6'3", 16 stone, 200 weight. Yeah, that's 3 inches taller than I am. I'm 6 foot. I'm about 12 and a half stone. So, it's like it tower above me. It was big bloke, big chest. So in order to do a Paul Sykes impression, if I were going, I'm 6 foot 3, it's got to be, I'm 6'3". You're talking from your chest voice. So it's right down there. So you're trying to get really deep down. And because what you know, you listen. What's the other the footage that you mentioned? Invariably, I do get it. I do get it. I don't break the law. I just turn up one morning at 8 o'clock and make myself welcome. I love that laugh that he always does.
I mean, Dennis Flint, but then they were actually trying to do a Paul Sykes too. The filmmakers told me, but obviously years later they went and he was too far gone then.
Yeah.
And they actually tried to do something on Dennis Flint, but he wasn't having it. So it's sad that that's the only footage of Mr. Flint, and he died in 2001, which was what? So that was first aired on December the 6th, 1990. So Dom, what other clips can we expect? Can we definitely expect to see a few more clips from you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm doing this because it's just.
I thought you were going to say, I'm doing this because I want to help the kids. That's all.
That's all. That's all. Yeah. No.
Just send your kids to me and I'll look after them.
Yeah, and I'll look at I was looking really nervous. It was just out of interest, was Kay at that do? Because I was just re-listening to Final Agony yesterday and the interview that you did with Kay, and I really kind of felt for her big style because it must have been difficult. It must have been a tough number, you know, with not only having Paul Sykes as a brother. And when he was spinning that kitten round, it's like that's the bullying aspect. Well,
I'll tell you what, Dom. Not many people know this, but Kay's actually in Paul Sykes at large. So, do you know the wedding?
Yes.
So she's the one where they're on the fireplace. She's putting flowers out, and Walter said, "Under no circumstances, don't you go." So if you have a look, you see her very quickly, kind of going like that.
Ah, right. I see. So yeah, I'll check. I'll look out. Yeah, because I know that she mentions in your interview Walter, and I think he had a big part. I mean, this is just my opinion, but I think he had a big part to play in how.
Oh, he was a monster. I mean, the mother was as well, and I mean, I've said this many a time today. And what we in now? So he was born 46. So he was kind of brought up in the 50s. So if he was brought up 2020, he would have been put into care. And she was equally as bad. There's. I mean, I've got voice recordings of Kay I've never put out. And she told me all sorts. Yeah, and there was pictures of all seen and. Never ever put them out.
Was it Kay that went to the clairvoyant?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And actually, they got a reading. They got a message through. Apparently.
Yeah, she said, basically, I've got a big man here, and she wouldn't accept the money because what he was telling her was that bad, and his choice of words were from the sewers. She wouldn't repeat it. Right. I mean, that's quite a story when he went to Chester Zoo, and Kath went with him.
Yeah.
And then Paul went with Kay 2 weeks after and said, "Watch what happens when the gorilla sees Paul." And he's seen him, and he just went absolutely berserk and tried to bust out of his cage, and obviously that's looking at another alpha male. Do you know? He probably literally just thought he was another gorilla, because with the gorillas, what you're not supposed to do is stare at them. It's seen as confrontational. But you've got a message there, Dom, on the screen.
Let's go do the clip where he's getting married. I'm not playing this Christian pretending shit. Oh, what was it? Christian pretending fucking shit.
The rules are this.
I feel like a bit of a gooseberry here. No, you're
right,
gooseberry.
So, Dom, you're going to be putting more clips out, and you're a bit of a musician. Can we expect to hear any songs on Old Sykesy in the future?
It'd be lovely to do that just as a bit of a laugh. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll work on it, Jamie. It's like I say, this was just these few impressions that I've done recently were just a bit of a test the water. First of all, to see if I were going to get death threats. I thought, if that happens, I'm taking everything down. I'm never going near it again. But you know what's been lovely though? Just about all the comments that I've read have just been, "Hey, that's brilliant, mate," or whatever. You know, they've been friends, and it's been so lovely to catch up with so many people I haven't spoken to for ages. Because you know what it's like. You're busy and with your day-to-day stuff, and you kind of lose touch. And it's just been really, really nice. And all these people that are fans of your books and sort of interested in the story, they're all absolutely dead sound, you know. They really, you know, it's really,
and I just say, Don, being hated is the new loved. So I am a proper pantomime villain in Wakefield and Teesside, but you know what? I like it kind of. I think it's quite funny. I'm not narcissistic. I get off on it.
No,
I'm only joking.
It's almost. I'll show
but
all.
Do you know what? All these people will slag you off and they've never met you, and you're like, I don't even know who you are. But you know, some people get it, some people don't. Listen, it was a very, very dark comedy. It was a very Roger Greenwood and Nick Lord said to me, anything in their career they ever did, nothing hit the heights as that documentary. And that was what. So I'm just trying to think. So they told me that in. Let me think. So they're literally. It was the week. Let me think. So 24 year after. Was it 24? 25 year after I spoke to them, and he said anything I've ever done, as nothing as did to the ratings and the viewings and the outrageous, just, you know, the emotions either way, nothing ever kind of got as big as that ever again. And you know, that's why it gets took off YouTube. Is I mean, people could, you know, for a documentary, I know ITV, they can charge £400 per second. But there is old footage for that documentary. I know it was 56 minutes put out, but for that documentary, Roger Greenwood and Nick Lord filmed 30 to 40 hours.
Is there any chance of getting hold of that footage, do you think? Would you if it came up for sale? Because obviously,
I think if the price is right. Roger did tell me. He said, "Look." So I met him in Harrogate. He said, "Look, I live in Otley. I'm not going to send you it. If you come to my house, I'll let you watch it." I never did. But he has footage. I know what it's about. I could probably tell you off screen, but it's very controversial what he's saying. This footage that is in Roger Greenwood's house, and I think you know the money talks, doesn't it? And obviously, maybe his missus might want to put it. I don't know, but there's certainly the filmmakers. They'll when this comes out and he's back in the public spotlight, he will kind of come out and people will come forward. And you know, as I said, I interviewed someone. I'm not going to name, but I interviewed someone in this year. And he said to me, "Oh, he's a wrong on him, you know, mate. I spoke to so-and-so down in the gym. Listen, he tells that. Doesn't tell that. Listen, on my kids' lives, he told me." And I'm sat there thinking, this is hearsay what you're telling me. You know, I've spoke to Eddie Richardson. I've spoke to Chris Lambrian, who lived next door to him for 3 years. I've spoke to Peter Fury. I've spoke to Charles Bronson. You know, Nick Manners, whose book I've got up this week. He said, "Listen, I was there." He said, "I was in prison with him a couple of times as a YP. None of that happened. Yeah, you know, never matter what your reputation is, if you're doing things like that, it just doesn't." I've been in loads of prisons. It doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean? But of course, people will make things up and the views, and I don't even argue anymore now. I just block. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, you know, that man off the documentary. Do you know the guy with the big beard and the glasses?
Yes, the prison boss or whatever.
Excuse me. So I spoke to him. I met him in London. So I spoke to the Home Secretary of Offenders. I've spoke to the Chief of West Yorkshire Police in 2020. Several prison officers. loads of Wakefield police officers, even people who didn't speak to me for the book, they spoke to me off record. And I've never, listen, this might sound a bit callous and ruthless, but I don't give a shit. He's a book subject. I didn't know him. I never met him. So was Jack the Ripper. So was Lee Duffy. So was Alan Thompson. So was Dominic Beresford. So was, Mickey Duff is now. Brian Clough will be next year. And I didn't. So I've got nothing to hide. Do you know what I mean? I've got. I mean, if ever there was, of course I'd put it out, because it'd be, if there was concrete evidence, then people watch films on the Yorkshire Red.
If they were. Absolutely, if they were corroborating stories, like the thing is, the whole thing with the Savile thing is, there were so many. He had a set sort of modus operandi. So he were like there'd be a certain way that he would abuse his victims, and all their stories corroborated. So there is no doubt what went on with Savile went on. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. But like you say with Paul Sykes, there's the story about the Sun newspaper, and but it's.
Well, do you know where that comes from, Don? So where that come from is Paul Sykes told John Spenceley that, and he said, "These are the words." He'd like to wind people up, so he'd go on the wing, and he'd go, "Yeah, I'm a big sex case. What are you going to do about it?" And he said, I went and spoke to Paul Sykes Jr. in prison about 8.5 years ago now, 2016. And he said, "Listen, if our dad was here now, he'd say, yeah, I have sex with men, or had." No, it wasn't something he shouted about, but it was kind of gay for the state. But there's the John Sutton thing. So, Loxley, if you have a look at John Sutton's interview on this channel, I ask him several times, and he says very, very different to me. So have a look at that channel. But of course, afterwards, he certainly put a different narrative out. But he, obviously, I'm very aware of Sykes's criminal history, where he was, and a few things about John didn't add up. And he says very different. Just go back and watch it. But I'm just literally, I didn't know him. I'm not in the Paul Sykes fan club. I don't care, really, to be honest. I like Alan Thompson, who I did his book. I like Nick Manners, whose book I've done. But I didn't know. Roy Shaw was another one I did with Roy's only biological son. Roy was happy with it. One of the other siblings wasn't, but it's not my fault. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't know Roy Shaw, but that was his take on it, and that's that. And listen, you'll always get people talking, and Delroy Showers, without a shadow of a doubt, he is the most interesting, charismatic person I've ever met on this book journey, if you like.
That was the interview that you did with him.
He's like a mixture of Chris Eubank Sr. and Derek Lord from Big Brother. He's very, you could put him in the House of you could put him in Buckingham Palace. The guy speaks 6 different languages. He's got degrees. I've been in his company a couple of times when he's just sat and broke out into Russian or German, and I'm just like, wow. He listens to classical music. He doesn't drink. He's not what he said, your average Darkie from Toxteth. So that's what he said, but fascinating, completely fascinating character. And he was probably closer to Sykes than anybody.
I was just going to say that. And if you notice as well, I think you allude to it in one of your books, that it was almost like, I know Paul was about 5 years older than Delroy or something like that, but he really looked up to him in a lot of ways. And if this funny bit, just because I'm always going on about the way that Paul Sykes, his accent and all that, there's 1 or 2 little bits in the documentary, if you notice, it just sort of, his accent slips. And it's when he's going to Dennis Flint's, it's, I don't advertise in the Yellow Pages. And all of a sudden it goes into an almost Scouse accent. And I just wonder, was it when he was living over in Blackpool that he picked up a twinge? You know, I don't advertise in the Yellow Pages.
But you know what? He was always in Middlesbrough. From about 77 to about 92. That was when he was gone, and John Spencer said, "Look, I liked him, but." He said, I seen him once at a boxing show in Ellen Road and he was going around causing havoc. You know, got in the ring and offered 10,000 people out that night. I spoke to the police who backed that up. Henry Wharton was fighting a guy. Basically, there was thousands of travellers and it was all going to kick off. Obviously, Sykes had went and had that altercation with Nick Manners and went out and John seen him and said to his brother Tony, he said, it's Sykes. He said, don't let him see me. Obviously, John was on a table full of millionaires because it was at the ringside. And it wasn't like bad. He just said, he said, these are like millionaires, businessmen. I couldn't have brought him over. You know, he said, he said, I took him to, where was it? 1985, when Barry McGuigan won the world title at Loftus Road. And he said, we drove down with Richard Dunn, who fought Muhammad Ali. So Richard Dunn's from Bradford, I think. And he's a very well-to-do guy, doesn't swear. And obviously every word comes out of his mouth was, so that was an interesting experience. You know, I remember John telling me, he said, I was in the Scotch Corner Hotel and he was effing and blind, and then some guy walked up to him and said, don't you be swearing in front of my wife, you. And Paul was like, hey, you, it's a free country, F off. So the bloke has went, get outside now. So then, obviously, Sykes has been sat down, so all of a sudden he's got up, and then it's dawned on him how much, and ended with that bloke going to hospital. There was another incident in Middlesbrough. I won't name him, but there's a really big name in Middlesbrough. And he was seeing one of John Spencer's barmaids. And he basically, Paul didn't like kind of middle-aged women, if you like, with makeup on. He liked them, 18, 9, like young lasses. And and this woman, basically, this hard case would buy this lady barmaid a bottle of champagne. So basically, Paul, seeing her sat there, went, go on, you fat cow, go and do some work. I'm sick of you. So obviously this woman's went and told this Middlesbrough hard case, who's still about now, and still a big name. And he basically rang John up in off the park and went, I'm going to come down your place and thrash that bloke. And John had to say, hang on a minute, here, listen, I don't think you quite understand. And then in the end, he was like, well, it's your club, you sort him out. But fascinating character. And would I have liked him if I'd have met him? I don't know, probably, maybe not. But would I have found him interesting? Absolutely. And so what can we see you doing in the future then, Dom? Well,
I think you've put this idea now in my head of maybe doing a bit of a song. So I might have a go at that. But as far as the impressions go, I've really sort of I'm riding a crest of a wave at the moment with it. So I'm going to work at the I want to work on the Dennis Flint stuff, because that's, for me, that's just that dialogue between the both of them. I'm over 18, Dennis.
What people don't realise, the interferes, but what Sykes actually says,
a man's right to get drunk but not disorderly. Well, you get bloody disorderly. If you
but what he says, what he says, if you fully hear him, he says, I'm over 18 and my dad knows I'm coming. But you can't really hear it because he interrupts.
Wow.
But if you listen to it, tonight, yeah. But do you know what, mate? We need to see other parts. We need to see a Dennis Flint. We need to see her getting out of Hull prison. We need to see. I mean, that would be a good one where he's naming all the authors. You know, Montserrat and all them kind of things.
There's
and
so many. Yeah. I will. Yeah. I will get on it. And if people, to be honest with you, Jamie, I just enjoy doing them. And if I can send them to you and you can bung them on your YouTube channel and get a few hits from it, that'll do me.
Dom, honestly, mate, right? The death threats. I've had Osmond warnings. I've had everything. I am literally. Do you know what? I'm releasing a book next year, and when I announced it, they went, "Oh my God, I can't believe it! The most hated boxer of all time, Junior Witter, is having his book written by the most hated author."
Well, there's one to stick on your CV then, Jamie. I am the most hated.
Do you know what I mean? But you've got to be rated to be hated. Do you know what I mean? If there's some little dink pop slagging me off who's got 27 subs, and like, I'm oblivious, mate. I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like I've released another bestseller. So I actually haven't released a book for 2 years.
You've just released the one. Was it yesterday?
And it was number one today, and then the Showers one will be coming out at Christmas. So that actually has a full chapter on Sykes. There's a lot of tales in there. Obviously, he was really, really close to the Showers brothers. There were, I mean, it's not nice to say, listen, there's no glamour. There's no glamour in that kind of life. Because I think I worked out, I spent 5 days with Michael over the years and, I rang him. And I think we worked out the court give him 44 years. No, was it 46 years? And he's done 24. I mean, he's did inside Turkey and Denmark and all. His best years of his life have just been eaten by locusts. And where's the glamour in that? So, but it's factual stuff. Do you know what I mean? There's people in Toxteth who kind of view them as Robin Hoods, and then there's the others that view them as robbing something else.
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
Do you know what, Dom? It's been an absolute.
As well.
Go on.
Yeah, sorry. Just one final thing. This Mike Tyson fight. How do you think that's going to play out?
It's an exhibition, isn't it? It's 16-ounce gloves. Yeah, it's I'm doing a book at the minute on Mickey Duff, who was the Mr. Big in box. So he was Britain's Don King, and I've spoken to various big people, and they've all said to me, if he was here, he'd be turning in his grave at the thought of this, because you've got Tommy Fury, who's not bad, but the facts of the matter is he hasn't even fought for an English title yet, but he's just earned millions. I prefer the northern, the area, the English, the British, the Commonwealth, the European, and then the world. And kind of boxing's been ruined by this. It's not really boxing, but my son loves it, and it's all the YouTubers and the MMA and all this. But I wouldn't watch it if it was in my hometown for free. It's not really proper to the anoraks, like, because they were like hardcore and study the game, and it's not really, it's a bit of a cheat to the actually proper fighters, to the fighters who've done it at every level. Do you know what I mean? And some who have 50 fights won't earn what Tommy Fury did in one fight. But you can't blame Tommy Fury. No. Do you know what I mean? So he's got a family, but it's ruined. And
well, it's like Walter Sykes said in the documentary, and especially back in the day, what other options there were for working class lads, but making them a bit of money out of boxing, So
it's a boxing for me. There's a website called Box Rec, which is the biggest in the world, and they contacted War Cry Publishing about 5 years ago, and they said, who's that guy? Blah, blah. And they said, so this is the biggest. Moral of the story. They said that guy's knowledge is A1, and but to be honest, I fell out of love with boxing for about 5 or 6 years. So I'm no longer hardcore. I'm just an observer. Yeah. So my son kind of laughs at me. He mentions all these boxers, and I'm like, who's that? But I'd rather kind of study boxing of the 70s and the 80s, when Mickey Duff and Jarvis Astaire and the cartel. Do you know what I mean? It's dead, really, to be honest. But do you know what, Dom? It's been an absolute pleasure. Was there any links you wanted to put in the bio? Anything you wanted to promote?
To be honest, God, I sound right boring old bugger. But no, it's just I just want to thank everybody that's posted all these lovely comments, and also as well, there's a good friend of mine who's been through a really hard time this year. He lost his brother, and he rang me up after seeing the impression on TikTok, and he said, you know what, that's really cheered me up, that because he actually is my age. He used to box at Lupsit Club where Paul Sykes, so he knew all the stories about Paul Sykes.
Well, do you know, sadly it's been knocked down. But
it has now.
I was there a couple of years ago, and just before it was knocked down, and I went in, and I was looking at an empty hall, but the stage was there, the wallpaper was the same, the curtains were the exact same, and I could just see him holding that Patrick Mackay thing, doing the raffle, and we went in the St. George's Church Hall. So I've literally been everywhere, with that kind of, there's a lot. There's some of it which is still there, but do you know what? The only name I'm ever allowed to call my wife by another woman's name is Kath. So I'll quite often just say, "Oh, I love you, Kath." Do you know what I mean? I could be in bed and call her Kath.
It's so funny that bit when he's this mountain of a man. I love you, Kath. He has to really sort of bend his back to reach down.
Yeah. But it's cracking. But you know what?
Don't mind being called Kath, then.
No, she accepts it. If it was anything else, I'd be dead. But you know what, Dom? It's an absolute pleasure, mate. Listen, we want to see more impressions. You've got definitely like kind of Hitler when he invaded Europe, he took steps by steps, and Napoleon. You need to do the full Sykes lot, and then maybe Dennis Flint, and I don't know, then maybe Mr. Lofthouse, or so. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Just examine.
Yeah.
He's actually still around as well.
What, the Lofthouse?
Yeah.
Oh wow! Now, am I right in thinking that he got clouted as well at some point?
So Paul's sister told me he did, but he denied it. So I don't know on that one.
No. Blimey, yeah.
But Roger Greenwood did.
Passing away this year as well, because it was only in January, wasn't it?
It was the start of this year. So Sykes hit him a few times. I know once he said he wouldn't smuggle cannabis in Nottingham prison. Because the guy who discovered Sykes before then was a guy called Fred Dinage.
Yes. How?
So,
if anyone doesn't know, he used to do a kids pro. I want doing a
so he written the Cray Twins book, and so he's the guy who's interviewing him in 77, 78 when he's saying like George. 750 beds, like Joe Bugner.
Oh, yeah, Joe Bugner, yeah.
So that's Fred Dinage. Yeah. So basically, he was interacting with him, and it was by about the mid-80s. He just said, "Look, I can't deal with you anymore. You blocked him." I don't think blocked him. Just basically just cut all ties with him.
Sure, yeah.
And I think he must have passed him over to Roger Greenwood and Nick Lord in about 87. And said, look, and it was basically too good to pass up. And of course, here we are now, 35 years on.
Absolutely.
So,
James, just one quick thing. The chronology of it all. Because if you look at bits in Paul Sykes at Large, so when was he released from prison? Was that 1989?
So that documentary was made 88, 89, 90. So it was first aired December the 6th on 1990. So he was released on September the 11th, 89, which is where you see him coming out of Hull prison. And that's where so that's where the film is going to start from. So the film is going to start from 89 and it's going to end in 2007 when he's a tramp and he's getting eggs smashed on him and peed on and lighter fluid poured on him and all the horrendous things. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be basically, I don't know, is that 17 years, something like that?
Something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Because what did it was obviously his parents died within 12 weeks of each other. The back end of 98. The wife left him in 99. And then the stroke of millennium was his pap. He turned into but he ended up in a place called Stanley Royd and he was on them tablets, which when he drank, they made him violently sick. I think he
must have been on.
Yeah. Well, actually, there was only 24 hours between the two.
Really?
Oh, yeah, but I think by 2001 or maybe the back end, he just said, "I'm miserable. I'm getting back to drink." And then 2002 was when he started sleeping homeless. But so the picture when he's got the jazz hands and he's got the 8 coats on. So that was November 2004. And that was outside the magistrates. And the picture where he's got all the scabs on. So that was September 2005. And that was when the kids set fire to him and a couple looked after him, gave him clothes, paid his first week's rent. And then obviously Paul being Paul just smashed the house up and made it a pig. Yeah. He was feral by that point. He was used to living on the out or being in prison. And his last prison sentence was the back end of 2005. His last crime was 2006. But certainly from about 2004, he was just waiting to die. And I think a lot of people would look at him and think, how the hell are you even still alive?
Yeah.
And obviously the people would go and hunt him like a trophy. And, these young lads who he beat their dads up or their granddads up with, he was a name. I've just beat Paul Sykes up. And, of course, he wasn't Paul Sykes by then. He was just somebody who used to be Paul Sykes. And, yeah, very, very sad. But,
if he'd have been in prison,
found God at the end.
If they could have kept him in prison, he'd have probably survived.
He was in prison. Yeah, he was in prison 2005, and he was never into hooch. He used to say, "I've come in to get away from it."
Detox. Yeah.
But
if you look at any footage of him in the prison, he looks really kind of broad. His shoulder muscles are massive, and if you look at the footage of when he's released in 89, and then you can see certain pictures, you think, my God, he's lost a tooth now. And you could almost see a sort of bit of a decline in the way that he looked when he was released to like even the shark foot, or certainly the Dennis Flint footage when he's on his roll-ups and he's got his tooth missing.
No, so that was the
time since leaving.
So that was the day after. If you notice, so when he's saying to Mick Senior in the club, you should see his gaff though. He's entitled to blow his trumpet. So the next day, so that was all filmed, like literally days after that bit. But obviously the bit where he's rough and he's saying to the kids, calves took 2 tenors, that was months. So that was 1990, probably about 6 months before it was aired. And you can see the decline. He's a lot thinner. He's not as switched on, and that's what Neil Malpass said to me. He said you could see it, but he just didn't have the discipline, of course, in life.
No,
being out, he was a somebody, and the drink, the drugs, because drugs was a huge part as well. The prescription drugs, the speed, even heroin. He'd not toot it, but he'd smoke it in a joint. He Paul Sykes Jr. said to me, my dad had a bash at literally everything. So, of course, he couldn't really do that in prison within reason. Yeah. So that was why basically he'd only ever written one. I was going to say one book, but there's two books.
Health a lot of favours actually being in prison.
Yes, but he did do two books. One's never been released. Well, the wife. So he was married 3 times, and one of the wife has that. And she said to me, "It's never going to be made public." I'm just trying to think what it's called. The leopards, Mablethorpe or something like that.
Oh, that was it. You know what? Yeah, I think I've heard it in one of your interviews somewhere. Yeah. And it's only like a first draft, isn't it?
Well, it was completed, and I mean, as I said, that was the only. He could never have the discipline to write on the out, because obviously he had too many distractions, debts, all this, and he was a celebrity, if you like, before he became a tramp. He was a god in prison, if you like, in that kind of stupid, silly prison mentality, if you like. He was a royalty, but on the street, he was someone that people wanted to buy beers to hang around with, do you know what I mean, or whatever. And so he was never kind of stuck, for even the days when he was. I spoke to someone very, very close to him, actually. I said I was in the pub with him one day, and he come in, and he just walked in and went, "You're buying me a pint. You're buying me a pint. You're buying me," and so on. Do you know what I mean? So he was never really out of drink, and then of course a lot of the licensed premises would just give him drink just to get him out of the hair.
Absolutely,
even at the end of his life, like a lot of pubs, a lot of kind of news agents had just given him a couple of special brew and put it down to, at shops. If you work in a shop, stock, I think they allow for something like maybe 2.5%, maybe 4% for damaged, and they just put it down for that and think,
that's it.
Sites, because it wasn't worth ringing the police and and getting a slap. And half the time he wanted to be in anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
that's right. Yeah.
But Dom, do you know what? It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. We will keep in touch. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your interviews, and thank you so much, sir. I'll leave the last word to you.
Right, we're done. That's it now. We've got about 30 years.
God bless, my friend. Take care.
All the best to your viewers. It's been lovely seeing your comments, and all the best to you, Jamie, as well. Thanks for having me on.
And I just need to think of something like, you can't fucking divorce me, and I swear that by God.